I'm Gail Westcot, and I am the director of the Kahrs Warnell Forest Education Center, and I am here to talk to you about environmental education through the Warnell School of Forestry and Natural Resources.
Gail, tell us a little bit about some of the duties that you have within the Warnell Center here and what your responsibilities are and how that links up with University of Georgia and the Warnell School.
Pretty much what I do primarily is conduct K through 12 programming for the local schools and also homeschool students. And so I do natural resource-based field trips, and in addition to having students come out to the forest, I sometimes also go to the schools and conduct programs there. In addition to that, I do teacher training workshops such as Project Learning Tree and Project Wild. I do those for teachers, but also natural resource professionals and college students as well. In addition to teaching, I also get to help maintain the facility. I have an annual operating plan and budget that I have to prepare every year. I have an hourly part-time worker that I oversee. On occasion, I get interns that I direct. And then, of course, there is trail maintenance and doing education type interpretive work on trails and signage, and with COVID-19 now making videos and trying to come up with ways to conduct programs virtually. So it's always changing, something new all the time.
So you talked a little bit about interpretation. So I assume that means with using certain live animals and other wonderful creatures that we have, and you have some here. What would be the value of using animals to teach? And if you don't mind showing us some of the animals that you have here.
Well, I could stand here and talk to you all day about snakes and how cool they are, or I could show you a snake and show you how cool they are. So obviously, using a real animal instead of just talking about animals helps engage people. It gives them an opportunity to interact with something that they may never see in their actual life. And it also forms personal connections with nature, which is the baseline of what we're trying to do in environmental education. So I'm going to pull out one of my favorite snakes, and we'll talk about him for a moment. So who I'm pulling out, his name is Twitchy. And he is an Arizona mountain king snake, which is actually not native to Georgia. And he's sleeping, so we have to disturb him. Come here, little man. And the reason I have him, even though he's not native, is because he looks very, very similar to a scarlet king snake, which also some people think looks like coral snakes. But obviously I don't want to have a coral snake because they're venomous. And scarlet king snakes are very difficult to keep alive in captivity. And so I have this guy, and they're very good eaters. They're very chill. I can hand him to a pre-kindergartner child and know that my snake will be 100% safe and friendly. He has a cute little face. He's very chill. He's about 15 years old, and he's been doing education programs for the entire 15 years. So I say he's my trained professional. And he's really good at what he does because he can take a child who has never touched a snake, maybe has a fear of snakes, and through his cute little face and his small, non-intimidating body with its pretty bright colors, he's able to be a really good ambassador for all snakes and show people that snakes are actually kind of cool and not scary and not slimy. Awesome. And they're a lot of fun to interact with. So
have you seen kids change?
Oh, definitely.
From that, oh my God, I'm so deathly afraid to...
I love snakes, and maybe I want to be a herpetologist.
Yeah.
The teachers, not as much. Sometimes it's harder on the adults, but the kids, you definitely see a change.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
For sure. Although, usually when I get classes, I don't have that many kids that really dislike snakes. Most of them either really are excited to see snakes or are a little unsure. It's not that common that I get somebody that really just hates them with the kids. Again, with the teachers, that's another story. A lot of the teachers are standoffish about them.
Really? That's surprising.
Yeah.
It would be the teachers and not the kids.
No. Although we do have some great teachers that love them, but if you get somebody who's deathly afraid, it tends to be the grown-ups more than the kids.
Sure. Sure.
But the snakes don't take care of themselves. How much time do you have to spend? You have 6 cages
Yeah,
here that
snakes,
have animals.
actually, we feed them about every 2 weeks, which isn't that time intensive,
Yeah.
but for some reason they poop more than they eat, and so keeping cages clean is a constant. We constantly have to keep cages clean and make sure they have fresh water, and also interact with them, because sitting in a cage 24/7 is not fun. And believe it or not, they're intellectual beings as well, and you know, they get bored and they like to be interacted with.
Now, do you have to have permits?
Not for the non-native snakes, and so right now all of my snakes are not native, so I don't have to have permits. However, if I was to get some native snakes like we plan on doing, we will have to have permits, but that's not a big deal because the DNR is very good about working with. I have permits for 2 gopher tortoises, and they're very good about working with you on those.
Great. So at what point in your life did you know that you wanted to be involved with environmental education?
Actually, it wasn't until graduate school. When I was in grad school, I taught genetics and undergraduate ornithology labs, and I discovered I really, really enjoyed teaching. And then I was doing some bat research, and we did public programming at national parks, and I discovered that I really liked working with the public. I liked working with children especially, and I kind of discovered a side to myself that I didn't really know existed. So I wasn't one of these that grew up wanting to be a teacher. In fact, if you had told me in high school that I'd be going into schools, I would have told you you were crazy. But I really enjoy what I do, and I feel very fortunate that I get to do this every day. I don't know what he's doing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like on any given year, how many students do you think you either have come here or you go to the schools?
Thousands,
Wow.
literally. But you know, it seems like a lot, but when you think about every school has at a grade level 125 students, usually minimum, the numbers add up pretty quick. So, and then I do a lot of homeschool where maybe I don't see as many, maybe I see 40 to 50 kids, but I get to see them on a continual basis. And so some students I actually get to watch grow up from being, you know, little kindergartners all the way up to I'm teaching kids of kids now. So
that's neat.
yeah, I've been doing this about 20 years, and so I'm old.
No.
I'm teaching kids of kids.
That's neat. That's cool.
Which is actually really cool. I enjoy it quite a bit. Watching kids grow up is pretty rewarding.
Speaking of which, beyond that, what other sort of attributes of the position that you have do you find the most rewarding?
Well, one would hope we're making a difference. That's ultimately what I would like to think. Primarily, you know, we hope we're teaching them more about natural resources, but I really think just providing a positive experience in nature is really important, especially for students nowadays who, some of these kids have never been to the forest, they've never touched a snake, they've never sat on the ground, believe it or not. And so giving them positive, safe experiences, I think, is important. And so it's satisfying to make a difference, and it's also personally satisfying because, again, you get to watch students grow up. I also get to meet a lot of really cool people, whether it's the kids themselves, their teachers, other natural resource or EE professionals. I just get to interact with some really awesome people, which is very enjoyable.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it's not a bad gig. I enjoy it. Do you want me to put him up now? And
Go ahead.
Yeah.
yeah,
Whatever.
he's like, I was thinking.
What'd you say his name was?
Twitchy.
Twitchy.
Well, his name actually is Hellboy. My husband named him. But I don't want to roll up to church camp with Hellboy, so I named him Twitchy, and we argue over what his name is. So if Daniel was here, he would be like, his name's not Twitchy. But.
Yeah.
And of course, they can't hear like we do, so he doesn't know his name, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Do y'all want to maybe go outside or walk around?
that'd
I
be
don't
great.
know if. This is Hondo.
Hondo.
He's cool. He's my poor man's indigo.
Now, tell us about the indigo.
He is not an indigo. He is a
Oh, I'm
black
sorry.
milk snake,
My
but
bad.
they call them the poor man's indigo
I
because
see.
they look very.
Take it out.
We can take them out.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, indigos are very expensive. You can get them. You have to get a federal permit.
Oh, wow.
And that's apparently not that difficult to do, but they can run anywhere between $1,000 and $3,000 a snake.
Goodness.
Whereas he was $150 and he looks just like one. And hopefully he won't be too punchy on me because, like I said, we get punchy when we.
Is he found around these parts?
Do I?
normally?
No, he is actually from Honduras.
Oh, wow.
But when he was born, he looked just like Twitchy, and then every time he shed, he got darker and darker, so he actually changed colors. But as an adult, he looks very similar to an indigo. So.
Yeah.
And we would love an indigo, but right now, dropping $3,000 on a snake is not something we're prepared to do.
Sure. Yeah.
And I can't get the Orion Society to give me one yet, so
Yeah.
I've tried. But he is cool. He is kind of like a German Shepherd. He's just super friendly.
How long
he
is it
likes to
now?
move around. He's probably pushing 7 feet, but he is just as chill as Twitchy. I mean, he loves to be out. He likes to interact with people. Do you want to hold him? He's very cool.
Sure. do.
Yeah, he's super sweet. And strangely enough, even people that don't like snakes or are kind of afraid of snakes end up loving him.
So
for
where
some
should I
reason.
move my right hand because I'm
Just-
afraid?
Just move it down.
Just move him. Just make sure he doesn't fall. That's
Okay.
all he
Yeah.
wants to care about is not falling.
Got it.
But he tends to be a little squirmier, wormier than some of the other ones.
And when's the last time he ate?
About 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So they're due to eat, which makes him happy and excited.
He's looking at your finger.
You don't smell like a mouse, so you're okay. Actually, he has never bit anybody, and I've had all of these snakes over 10 years.
Right.
And they've done thousands of programs, and I've had one snake bite one kid one time many years ago, and that snake actually has passed away since then. But, and the kid's mom was like, of course my kid would get bit, that's just how they are, so she was fine about it. So it was no big deal, but it's only happened once. And literally thousands of programs.
He's trying to wrap around my left just to get comfortable, right?
Yeah, he just wants
Stabilize.
to hold on just so he doesn't fall.
Yeah.
You are a living tree. But he's a cool snake. I really like him.
He's got a pretty color to him. I'll pass him back to you.
Yeah,
So,
they're fun.
thanks.
And he kind of gets that rainbowy look too. in-
Yeah, I saw
in
with the light kind of shows almost
Yeah,
bluish.
I don't know if the camera will catch it up, but again, he looks very, very similar to an indigo.
Cool.
Very cool.
Very.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a lot of great awards and positives about working at the Warnell Center. Are there any barriers or constraints or things that are difficult maybe to overcome?
Right now, COVID-19 is our biggest challenge. We're waiting to hear what the school districts are going to be doing for the fall. And so I don't know if they'll still be doing field trips. If not, I'll go to schools. If I can't go to schools, we'll do virtual learning. But adaptability is a big thing in environmental education because whether
Right.
it's the weather or, changing conditions societally, whatever. So that's a challenge. Also, just increasing numbers of students. It used to be I'd do a program for a single class. Now I have schools that want to bring out 3 to 4 classes at the same time, which is somewhere around 60 to 70 students, and it's just me. And so there's so many students out there now, which is a good problem to have, but it is a challenge, being able to accommodate larger groups.
So when they bring 60 or 70 students, do they not have teachers to
Well,
help
they
manage
do have
the
oh yeah, they're
students?
teachers, but as
Oh,
far as
okay.
conducting
Yeah.
that actual education
Right.
program, it's just you. And,
Just you.
and it also makes it really hard to individually interact with each student,
Oh,
and that's
yeah.
something I'm really big on. I like to try
Mhm.
to make a personal connection with each child, and when you have that many, it becomes really difficult. So then you feel like you aren't maybe doing what you should be doing as much as you can, and so really it's just there are just so many kids out there in schools and trying to accommodate an entire grade level at a
Right.
time or whatever is a big challenge. Also competition from other facilities, because it's wonderful living in Savannah and being in this area, but there are a lot of other places, and so trying to maintain programming that is attractive to teachers and meeting the teachers' needs to, give them something that they want to come to and come back to is challenging as well, because
Right.
you've got to stay on top of your game at all times or they won't come.
That's
So,
right.
you
But
know,
you've also incorporated Project Learning Tree,
Yes.
Wild and Wet.
and that helps a good bit.
And so with those trainings, how do you feel students at the Warnell School PRTM program should be looking at their future professional development? What are ideas that you have that would help them?
Outside of PLT Wet and Wild, or
Just
well,
the importance of those, but
oh.
then other things that you might know about.
I cannot overemphasize the importance of PLT Wet and Wild, because they are good, they work, I use them all the time, and they will help get you a job. I work with Georgia Southern students and their rec and tourism program, and a lot of those students come and do PLT and Wild workshops with me and have
Okay.
actually gotten hired because they had that training,
Really?
whereas other students haven't. And so Dr. John Peden, who I work with to do the workshops,
I know John. Yeah.
he's wonderful. Well, he specifically, has told me we do these workshops because it helps get my students careers. And
That's
so,
great.
That is good.
and then of course, actually using them during your job. Like I said, I use them all the time. I've been doing this 20 years, and I've done some Project Learning Tree activities probably thousands of times, and I still love doing them because they're that much fun. So
They do work.
yeah, they do.
They
I
do
mean,
work.
there is no overstating the importance of those.
How important is understanding the teacher's perspective of their classroom, the constraints they're under with correlations to state standards, and making sure they're always teaching standards? How do you translate that for the teacher so you can encourage the teacher to come here? What do you do to make sure that they are fully informed that coming here, we'll cover these standards, et
Well,
cetera?
basically, whenever you advertise your programs and you say, I offer these programs for this grade level, next to that program you have it meets these standards. So they know from the get-go when they schedule with you, they're coming and they're doing something that's going to meet specific standards, and not just that it's going to meet the standards, but which ones specifically. So they know that initially.
When you started your career in environmental ed, did you have any idea about understanding of standards and all
No,
of
the
that?
whole teaching profession was very new to me. Their whole language was new to me. I always laugh about how I didn't know what a rubric was, and
Yeah.
you probably think, oh, that's no big deal, but you say that to teachers and ha ha ha, that's hilarious, because that's something that's very important in what they do.
Absolutely.
And so to them, not knowing what a rubric is very silly, because it's fundamental in what they do. So kind of
Learn the
learning-
teacher talk.
Yeah, learning that was there was a learning curve for sure, and
Right.
I think it's very, very important for you to be cognizant of what teachers, the pressures that they are under, and then trying to make their job as easy as possible, because them coming to you is not something they have to do, and so
Right.
you have to make yourself as accommodating as possible and help them do their job.
So you came into this job 20 years ago with a strong content background,
Yes.
wildlife and forestry. Some environmental educators come into the field of environmental education with strong teaching background but low content.
Well, that's where Project Learning Tree and Project Wild comes in, is because you can be an excellent educator and not have the content knowledge, and PLT Wet and Wild provide that content knowledge for you.
Right.
Whereas I kind of came in the other way, where I had a lot of the content knowledge but wasn't sure how to translate that into an effective education program. And so that's the beauty of these EE curriculas, is that they kind of put together the teaching and the content knowledge, and you can approach it either way and conduct a successful program. And then using what you learn in those projects, you can make your own unique programs once
Right.
you kind of get a feel for it.
So knowing what you know now,
Yes.
would you do it the same way? Would you want, and do you feel that it's maybe advantageous to have a stronger content knowledge to then learn the teaching side, or do you?
I think think that's
Well,
probably
if you were to do it
something-
over again, would you go the same route? Would you
Yeah,
go
because I enjoyed
teaching?
my graduate and undergraduate, and
Yeah.
so although I still think about going back to school and doing teaching, because you can never stop learning.
Right.
But I feel like that's probably something that's very individualistic,
Mhm.
and so for some people it works one way, other people it works
Right.
another, and everybody's path. The cool thing about EE is everybody brings something different to it, and so everybody has something to contribute to the field and do
Right.
things their own unique way, which makes, I can do the same program as you and it's going to be a different program because we're different people.
Right.
And
right. So our PRTM students, they're having more of a stronger content background coming from Warnell. What would be your recommendations for them when they enter the field as a young professional, mentors in the teaching profession? What would you recommend that they do to really help get their trajectory towards good, strong environmental education practices
Well,
and skills?
outside of becoming certified in PLT Wet and Wild, not just as an educator, but I'd strongly encourage them to attend facilitator training
Right.
and achieve that level of leadership in those programs. But also be involved in their professional organizations. You've got to be involved. You've got to know your coworkers. You've got to stay involved. And then volunteer. Figure out not just what you like to do, but what you don't like to do. And figure it out on a volunteer basis before you get hired and get a job
Excellent.
deciding that, maybe this isn't what I really thought I liked. And so just put yourself out there, never say no, say yes to opportunities, and, expose yourself to as many different things as possible, because EE allows you to do some really crazy cool stuff. And go cool places as you're young. Travel, take internships, go to places outside of Georgia or
Right.
outside of the U.S. and take opportunities, and don't say no to things, say yes.
That's so true. That's so true. The idea that students are sometimes not connected enough, and maybe they don't feel connected enough. I know here in Georgia we have the Georgia Environmental Education Alliance, and at the national level we have the North American Association for Environmental Education. Those are our two, as you well know, the professional societies or groups. What are some others that you would think of for students in PRTM that might be beneficial?
Well, I'm strongly involved in the Society of American Foresters. I'm the state secretary and also my local chapter secretary. A lot of what I do is forestry education, so maintaining those relationships with forestry professionals is extremely important to what I do. If you're double majoring in wildlife, you have the Wildlife Society. You have nonprofits like becoming a member and being involved in the Georgia Forestry Association or the Longleaf Alliance or the National Wild Turkey Federation. Any conservation organization that meets something that you're interested in. Again, get involved, stay involved, let those people help you. Because a lot of times jobs aren't what you know, it's who you know, and opportunities come from putting yourself out there. And of course, why are you doing this but to be involved and have fun with it?
That's right.
So.